Good afternoon. Ooh, it is really on. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Phakamile Madonsela. We are running late for our session. Our guest speakers are on their way here. They are coming from school, so we can understand the importance of being a little bit delayed in this regard. So we're just going to wait for them a few minutes, and then we'll start once they get here. In the meantime, Phenyo, do you want to maybe have a quick announcement around?
Good afternoon, everyone. So just before we start off with this session, we just want to close the loop on the previous session that we had, wonderful panel discussion on slaps, weaponization of court processes, and how all of these are meant to stifle speech, especially within the media space. ALT Advisory, in collaboration with the Thomson Reuters Foundation, is currently conducting a deep dive into the legal challenges and threats that are faced by journalists and other actors sort of within the media space. And this is meant to be a very participatory sort of process in the sense that we have surveys, we've had focus group discussions, and we want the perspectives of as many people within the media space as possible. So you will see here is a QR code which will link you to the South African survey on the legal challenges faced in South Africa by journalists in South Africa. You can just scan the survey. It shouldn't take you more than 10 minutes to complete, and you will see there are options to sort of choose if you are responding in your capacity as a journalist, as an editor, as an activist, or other member within the media space. We would really appreciate your feedback. Shouldn't take too long. And at the end of the day, you know, it is for a very important cause, we feel, is identifying what are these really complex and sort of preeminent and continuing challenges that journalists are facing in South Africa. Thank you.
So we'll give you a few minutes. Yes, you can clap. I'll give you a few minutes to do that. I was tempted to do an icebreaker because, you know, when you work with children, that's the first thing people do or tell you to do, to collaborate on when you come into a room. It's like, oh, you work with children, please do the icebreaker first. No, we're not going to do an icebreaker. But after you've done this, we'll wait until 2. I'm sure 2, the 2 guest speakers would have arrived. Please, you can go outside, grab some water, some tea, and we'll start promptly at 2. Thank you.
Something now. Yeah. What up, get on you? Get on you. What up, get on you? Getting on what? Get up, get on. Get up, get on. Get up, get up, get up. Get up, get up, get up. Get up, get up. Get on you.
Thank you so much for your patience. We are going to start in the next 2 to 3 minutes. Msizi at the back, if you can help me with colleagues that are outside that need to come inside. Thank you so much, Msizi. Lovely. We are going to start. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. My name is Phakamile Madonsela. I am the Public and Media Skills Development Manager at Media Monitoring Africa. Welcome to our session. I know it took a little more time than, the starting time was a bit delayed, but I think it's all going to be with it. As you see, our beautiful guest of honors are here, present, and ready to start. Welcome to our session. The title of our session is Critical Media Information Literacy for Children, Navigating News, Influence, and AI in the Digital Age. The session will start with 2 short presentations. I think that will highlight the critical role that media information literacy plays as an essential life skill in today's digital world where our learners and our children find themselves in, where kind of there's a blurring of lines, where AI and news and influence and who gets to unpack the news and how it's unpacked gets a little bit blurred, especially for our young people. And so our panel will really focus on, so after the presentations, our panel will really focus on exploring some kind of or coordinated strategies that Media Monitoring Africa support in advancing children's digital rights and ensuring that young people and the media are responsible or have the skills to be able to, one, when it comes to young people, they have the skills to be able to navigate news in the digital age, and then in terms of journalism, journalists being able to continue to safeguard and protect children's rights in the media. And so our focus is around those 2 aspects and how it relates to children's digital rights. So we'll start off with Musa. You want to start off? We've already done that. We did that in this, yes, we already done that in the first session. So we'll start off with Musa Rikhotso, who is MMA's project coordinator, who'll share a little on what MMA has been doing around advancing media literacy for South African children. Please give him a huge round of applause as he comes up to the stage. He has a short presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Musa Rikhotso from Media Monitoring Africa. So my role today is to give you a short analysis of the report that we did after the learners that you see here, done the monitoring. But briefly, before I do that, I want to talk to you briefly about what led to the kind of monitoring we did. So last year, Phakamile did a study about news, how children read news. And then we find that most of the children read news online. And then we decided that we need to adopt or move away from CMP, CMMP, which is Children Media Monitoring Project, which meant to monitor the news online on the traditional media only. So we decided that children should, sorry, I'm a bit nervous, I don't know why. Come on. Yeah, the light is too much. Yeah, can you dim the light, please? Oh, thank you. So let me start again. So we decided to take our monitoring online because children spend most of the time online monitoring the news. So About the project, about the project. So about the AMLP project, which is Advanced Media Literacy Program, is to empower children with knowledge about their rights in the media, to equip children with skills about how they spot, report, counter, and address mis and disinformation. And another one is equip children with digital literacy skills with a focus on how to safely navigate online spaces and how algorithms work and how to positively use the internet. So the objective for the monitoring that the learners did was to determine how easy it is to find children's stories on social media like Facebook and TikTok, to access children's view of the story, to assess the children's view of the story they read, and also to assess whether children are able to identify when their rights are being violated or respected. So the methodology we used, children were trained on how to identify children's rights in the media in terms of their privacy, freedom of expression, and dignity. And children also trained how to monitor the media using standardized methodology developed by Media Monitoring Africa as a pilot study for this type of monitoring. After the training, they were asked to monitor news from these two platforms, Facebook and TikTok. This platform was chosen because of the children who are media monitor use this platform to access the news. And the monitoring was done for the period of 2 weeks. So here are the findings. Where did the story come? Where did they monitor the story from? 58% of the stories came from TikTok, 42% came from Facebook. Children's stories. Out of the stories that they monitored 8% were about children, and then 92 were about not related to children. And the number of stories in total, in terms of the number, was 1,800. Social media story versus traditional media. So here we compared the social media that the children monitored versus the media monitoring that we do yearly at Media Monitoring Africa to focus on children, how the traditional media report on children. So the difference here is that social media had a lot of stories compared to the traditional media, but the difference is just 1%, but it means a lot. Were the story bad or good? 58% of the story were good. 42% were bad. Some of the reason the learners felt that those stories were bad is that the media named the learner who was bullied, and the media showed a picture of a child who was expelled from the school for the hairstyle. And some of the reason for feeling good were the story protected the identity of the child who was abused. The story accessed the children who won an award. To conclude, the monitoring shows that with proper media information literacy training, children can critically analyze news. They were able to identify when their rights are respected or not. They can clearly identify if the story is in their best interest. Best interest meaning that the story was good for them, where they were supposed to be accessed were accessed, where they were supposed to be protected, the identity protected was protected. And the last one is more effort is needed from media houses to highlight positive, empowering stories that respect the children and dignity. That was it. It was a short presentation because it's a pilot study. So maybe next year when we do it again, we'll have a longer presentation and adopt the recommendation that the children made when they were monitoring. All right, thank you. I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Musa. And I think I'd like to highlight a few things as we go on to the next speaker, who's going to be talking about some of the emerging risks and harms that AI presents when children engage in social media and what that means for their digital rights. So some of the things that Musa talked about that I'd like to emphasize on the fact that there is an effort from Media Monitoring Africa's side in terms of equipping young people and seeing the shift, right, and moving with the shift. So for the past 20 years, we've been equipping young people to be able to be critical of the media, to engage in the media, to have a voice in the media, and to be able to respond to some of the issues that are missing or the gaps that young people see in how media represents children. And we've been primarily doing this through monitoring traditional media. But now we're seeing a shift. Like Musa said, last 2023, I did a research in both Gauteng and the Northwest, and we found that young people are increasingly using social media to be able to access news. And they engage with news specifically on social media more than they do on traditional media. But with that said, they don't trust social media. They don't trust the news, the content that comes from social media. They don't trust the content that they are receiving, but they continue to use social media. And we see that also with adults, right? We don't trust a lot of stuff that comes out of the internet, but we continue to use the internet, right? And so what needs to happen, and what we see in the information ecosystem, is that there's a dual challenge, and it's simultaneous. On one hand, our young people face tremendous challenges when they are online, but the social media and the internet has enabled the kind of access to information that we've never seen in our lives before, where young people can go online, they can follow influencers and news analysts, and news can get unpacked for them in a way that traditional news just can't, right? And it's on the go, it's ready, whenever they need it, they can access it. At the same time, we see that media still continues to violate children's rights in the media. We have issues where Musa was presenting on when the young people here monitored social media, and the news that they found on social media was that when they said it was bad, it wasn't necessarily that the story was written in a bad way, or it was just because they felt that children's right to privacy, for example, was not upheld. So the journalist, for example, did not, in a story when it was not in the child's best interest to be named and identified, the journalist continued to name and identify, right? When the children said the story was good, it was because when it was in the best interest of the child to be accessed and interviewed, the journalist did that. They interviewed the child to get their side of the story, to get their views and opinions on important issues that affect them. Also, the idea that one of the learners said that because they wrote a good story about a child winning an award, young people and children want to see themselves as having agency. And when a journalist does that, it does a lot of things for policymakers. It changes the narratives around children as being these victims, these helpless victims that have no agency and are always in constant need of help. And that obviously has an impact in how policies get written, and how we understand children, and how we shape policies and decision-making processes that affect children. So it's really, really important that we see the shift, but media is still not doing enough to be able to help us to empower young people to engage critically with information and news online, and to have that news space that has now been created to be safe for children. Now we're going to move on to Phenyo's presentation, which, as I said earlier, is really talking about the emerging risks associated with the use of AI, especially for children's digital rights. And as we all know here, when we're using social media, we are at the hands of AI, right? Everything we do, from who we follow to what we see, is driven by AI and generative AI. And so this next discussion connects really well to how children engage with news online and potential harms that young people continuously face when they engage with social media and the internet. Thank you so much. Phenyo is Phenyo Sekati from Power Law Africa. She is a legal practitioner. Thank you so much. Can we give Phenyo a warm welcome?
Thank you so much, Phakamile, for the introductions, and thank you so much, Musa, for starting us off very, very strongly. So my role is quite simple. I am here to basically soft launch or hard launch a discussion document that was prepared by myself and a colleague of mine, Slindile Khumalo, who is also at Power Law Africa, on the effects and implications of Gen AI on children's rights. So maybe before I sort of get into what the discussion document entailed, you can access the discussion document through this QR code. If we can maybe just keep it up, for the duration of my presentation for people to scan. It is about a 33, 35 page. It isn't too long, but it is quite insightful. And I think the purpose of this sort of panel discussion, in addition to figuring out where we're heading, is also just realizing where we are. So that's what the discussion document does quite a bit. So the title of the discussion document, as you can see, is Simulating Safety and Assessing the Implications of Generative AI on Children's Digital Rights in particular. And I must preface this by saying that, the world of AI is hopeful, but also is quite dark. And in assessing some of these sort of emergent threats, we will touch, and we do touch on some very sensitive issues. It will be kept very high level for purposes of this discussion and this panel discussion, but maybe just have that in mind. But we found it very important to speak on sort of these harsh realities, some of these darker topics, because they are our reality, and that is where we are right now. So I won't get into the whole discussion document. I would really encourage everyone to read it, but maybe just to give you sort of a structure or an idea as to how we went about it structurally and some of the key issues that were raised. Very importantly, we start off our discussion document with a story. And we started off with a story of a young person from Florida who had communicated with, or was in communication with, an AI tool, a chatbot, so to speak. And that communication and that sort of reliance that that child had, that young person had, on that platform, and sort of the conversations that were shared became so dark that eventually the child did die by suicide. And that's sort of how we start off the story. I want to add another story, and this is something that popped up yesterday. OpenAI, who I think most of you are aware of. OpenAI is sort of the, I want to say like the group, or the organizing body behind ChatGPT. Yesterday, their CEO announced that they will, at some point, begin allowing erotic content to be shown on their platforms. Now, this content would be for verified adults only. I think we, as social media users, we all know how easy it is to just say, I'm 18, it's good. And so this is kind of where we're at right now. This is kind of some of the things that we're dealing with. So we started off like that, just to paint this picture. It's dark, and it was definitely a choice on our end, but I think we need to recognize sort of the urgency of us responding to some of the threats emanating from AI, especially generative AI. And so we frame it like that. And we also have this kind of, we played around with this sort of juxtaposition throughout the paper, acknowledging that at the forefront is the importance of internet access. And we also debated a little bit on whether, internet access is a right, and this is sort of an emerging conversation within different spaces. We looked at a lot of international frameworks, regional frameworks, and we brought it home sort of more targeted by looking at our legislation within South Africa, as well as the draft National AI Policy Framework, which was sort of proposed as an idea last year. And the framework, some of the things that it aims to do is just to include the need for ethical guidelines development, privacy and data protection, safety and security, transparency, explainability, and the need for fairness and mitigation of bias. Then we go into what some of the emergent risks are, give sort of a snapshot into where that leaves us, and sort of wrap up on recommendation. So two things that are very prominent, or I think are quite prominent throughout the paper, sort of this idea of design justice and safety by design, which is something that we carry sort of within the preliminary recommendations as we cover each topic, but then in the recommendations in full towards the end. And I just want to explain it a little bit. Design justice is sort of the notion or the idea of including at-risk communities, so otherwise vulnerable communities, in design processing of technological products, and it promotes co-collaboration in order to sort of counter the potential structural challenges or inequalities that a product or service in question may otherwise cause, right? So it's a co-collaborative sort of initiative that includes and sort of puts at the front participation of at-risk communities, including children. And safety by design was inspired by the 5 Rights Foundation safety principles, which is sort of an approach to designing and developing products and systems with the goal of mitigating risks and preventing harm from the outset. One thing that we have recognized and that we've seen, unfortunately, is that this was not a primary consideration with the rollout of AI tools, either where they're either self-standing or where they're embedded within other sort of applications, as sort of safety. And we want to have an approach where within our recommendations, where we want to have our own systems, where we want to sort of challenge the systems that have been put before us by the global north, to put safety as a forefront as opposed to an afterthought. So just on some of the trends that we recognized and we touched on surrounding generative AI, firstly was sort of generative AI being used to create child sexual abuse material. And we see this, and we already see this issue with sort of the hyper-realization of deepfake videos. I don't know what site it's called, I don't know what it is, but there is now these videos and you see them all over TikTok and Twitter. Maybe I'm just on social media too much, but it is becoming increasingly difficult to tell if these are real or not. So imagine dealing with these sort of issues regarding deepfakes in the context of child sexual abuse material, CSAM. We see AI nudifiers, we see kissing apps, for example, a lot of which are open source, so anyone can use them, and you can also sort of be offline when using some of these applications. So we also recognize sort of Gen AI's role in fueling mis and disinformation. You know, we used to live in a world where if someone says something, we could ask, like, where's the proof? And they would show you a video, or they would refer you to, you know, a written piece, or they would ask you to just Google it. And you would find credible sort of evidence, and you will understand where the source of that information is coming from. Now we've kind of moved past that, where sort of information is no longer sourced, but can also be manufactured. And that is a big driving factor towards, you know, fueling disinformation on online spaces. And we see that especially in sort of pivotal moments, such as during elections, at, you know, where there's moments of political discourse, but also just sort of generally, and it goes from the smallest things, but to big things. And then sort of the third trend that we recognize quite broadly is just the role of generative AI in the world, and the implications of the use of generative AI, not just in its application once, you know, it's a finalized project, but all the way from sort of the extractive part of getting to a point where you have these AI systems. And what we mean by that is, because that is a lot of words, is we acknowledge that, you know, while AI it can and there's scope for AI to be used as an aid in reducing carbon emissions within the world. The reality is the development and sort of widespread use of Gen AI tools are causing a massive spike in demand for data centers, which has adverse impacts on electricity, water supply, and interestingly, there's an estimated, if we continue at the rate that we are continuing, we will see an estimated 16 million tons of cumulative waste generated by 2030 just from running AI systems. And we found this important to note because at the end of the day, in 2030, whose problem is that going to be? It's going to be, the children of today's problem. And so we recognize that AI's challenges don't only come in once the application is being used, it's also the extraction of sort of some of these minerals, and we see situations of children being sort of put into unfortunate situations across the world, such as in the DRC, where they have to sort of extract minerals that then aid in developing these data centers, of which those data centers release a lot of pollutants and a lot of waste that children will now have to sort of grapple with in years to come. And then sort of at the back end of these trends that we recognize, we also just recognize general issues. And the first was just sort of technical issues in understanding what AI technologies do. I think many of us have sort of a working understanding on sort of policy reform and maybe some human rights implications there too, but we don't really understand sort of the deep, we don't have a deep comprehension of sort of the scientific methods of underlying AI technologies. And this is made even harder because these platforms are not very transparent. OpenAI, Midjourney are sort of examples of companies that have been approached and were unresponsive to requests regarding how personal information is used by data subjects and how it feeds into training data for AI generally and then also generative AI specifically. So that's one such example. Second is just sort of systemic and regulatory trends issues. And again, it's just sort of this notion of trying to balance innovation with appropriate regulatory boundaries and understanding that there's an interplay between privacy rights, freedom of expression rights, access to information rights, and just general safety and security rights that need to be addressed somehow through regulation, but it's difficult to do so. Firstly, because the black box sort of nature of AI technologies makes it very elusive, so it's very hard to basically understand the extent to which data is being processed and your information is being retained, and this is kept away from us to some extent. But also there's also just challenges in sort of finding a way to enforce said regulation, especially because we are in South Africa. A lot of these companies operate within the global north, and there have been increasing issues in sort of trying to found jurisdiction to even begin with for matters to be heard where there are complaints emanating from sort of the use of Gen AI. And then we go into some of the recommendations, but I will chat about those later. But the recommendations, very importantly, are focused on prioritizing children's participation sort of in the whole life cycle of AI deployment. So at the very beginning, should it be policy reform? Should it be developing systems that sort of feed into or respond to sort of the African context? Children should be included from the beginning. And there's a couple other recommendations that we have as well, but I just wanted to hone in on that one just for the purposes of time. But that is our discussion document. It is very much a snapshot, I think, of where we are currently where we are potentially headed and sort of what safeguards we have and what safeguards we need. So please do give it a read. Please do scan the QR code if you haven't done so already. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Phenyo. And I think we get the sense in how it connects, right? Because Musa's presentation was around some of the efforts to ensure that young people remain critical of media, remain or become active digital citizens that know how to engage with the media. But at the same time, when they are online, they face so much harm, potential harm and risk. And I think Phenyo did an excellent job in highlighting the extent of the impact of generative AI, not just when children engage specifically with news content and whether it's accurate and accurate news that they should be engaging with, but just generally when they are online. And that's why I think for us at MMA, when we were doing this pilot, it was really important to cap it at 2 weeks. Even though our young people were all underwent an online safety program training, but because we just don't, some of the AI, especially online harm, but more specifically AI harms, we just don't even, we can't even wrap our heads around as yet, right? The extent to which the harm can extend to the young person. And so even though young people have critical media and information literacy skills, there is a need for us to talk about what is the other person's responsibility, what are the other party's responsibility, right? And I think we'll touch a little on that. But I want us to now get to the next session, which I think is more interesting. I think people are more excited about that, which involves our young people. So I'd just like them to introduce themselves and maybe just tell us a little bit about your journey with the Advanced Media Literacy Project. How did you find it? Just general feelings about it. How did you find it? What is the thing that you learned the most? You know, just introductory remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leruo Moraba, and today I'll be sharing with you my experience during media monitoring. During this process, I have learned that the media respects children's news, especially when I was monitoring children's news. The media can represent children in a positive way. Specifically on one of the stories that I monitored, they showed a toddler who was forced to do gang signs and wear inappropriate clothing. So the media respected the child's rights by blurring out the child's face to protect him from potential bullying as he grows up, and to protect him to protect his identity. What I liked during this process is that I learned more about the news, and I got to watch the news many times to see that the media actually respects children like myself. What I didn't like was that most of the stories about children were about children either dying, going missing, or getting killed or getting raped, and it just comes to show how cruel this world has gotten. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mpile Ngobo. During the media monitoring program, we learned about misinformation and disinformation. And on social media, you find a lot of misinformation and disinformation. But because people don't check their sources, a lot of misinformation and disinformation gets spread, and people actually believe that it's true. So in order for us to be able to prevent spreading misinformation or disinformation, we can start checking our sources. Like when you see a story on TikTok, maybe Google into it, check if it's on the news and if it's actually true. What I liked about the media monitoring program is that when monitoring children's stories, many of them were respected. Their rights were respected, such as rights to privacy. A lot of children's faces were blurred out because many children's stories in South Africa are not always good stories. They often relate to violence, and rape and kidnapping. So many of those children who have experienced that, their faces were blurred out. The media, often respects children, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Leroy and Ompile. And I think they really shared comprehensively kind of the skills that they've gotten, right? And now I want to maybe delve deeper, Musa, into some of the competencies of the Advanced Media Literacy Program and how, what kind of skills the young people are getting, what kind of skills maybe do we also need to think about in ensuring that we are on our toes around the kind of skills, the critical media information literacy skills that young people need to get as they progress and increasingly, being integrated into the world of internet and social media.
Okay, thank you very much, Phakamile. The aim of the project is to, I give children digital skill, they know when they go online, how to be safe. They know how to spot mis and disinformation, we were saying here, and then also to make sure that they know of their rights. Because majority of the children don't know that they have a rights, how the media report on them. And even some of the others don't know that. So we need to empower them to know that when they read a story about children, they know what to look for.
And maybe then we can go back to our two special guest speakers. When you were monitoring the news on social media, how easy was it to get news stories, just news in general, not even news about children, but just news in general?
It wasn't that easy to find news on social media because news isn't that trending on social media. So I found it quite difficult to find news on social media.
I also found it quite difficult to find news on social media, especially on TikTok, because the news on TikTok are often mixed with trends or jokes. So it is really hard to tell whether it's just jokes or whether it's real news or not.
And I think that goes to some of the things that we thought about when we were doing the pilot, right? If we want to, and we need to be thinking about it, is that when we say that young people should be online and should be engaging with news online, what about algorithms? And how do they shape their access to news content, right? So if you're on TikTok or you're on Instagram, you won't get news if you're not following news houses, media houses, right? Because then it's just not going to be part of your algorithm, right? And so it's like this added thing that young people need to start thinking about when they go online. I remember when we were growing up, which is many moons ago, unfortunately, is that we would all watch the news at 7 o'clock. It was just a thing, My mother used to say, two things, if the lights on the street is on, or if you hear that sound just before the news and you're not home, you are very late. So by the time that sound of the news comes on, you need to be rushing home and make sure that you're sitting down and watching the news with your parents, right? So we would always have that time to be able to engage with the news and hear what the news is about, and then also ask questions when we don't understand. But now young people just don't have that time with their parents because they're doing other things, right? And so then a lot of the access to information is really reliant on the fact that they have media information literacy to know that when I'm on Instagram, when I'm on TikTok, I need to also follow new media houses so that I can get news content, or else I just won't get news content. When I was doing the research in 2023, I found that young people also don't know the difference between what is current affairs and what is just entertainment. Right? There's this mixture and blurring of lines. When you ask them, they did a diary for 7 days, and I asked them, what news content did you engage with? And they said, I watched, it was new, and they ticked it under news and said that there was a line in Braamfontein, and that made the hit, and I was just like, that can't be news, right? So for them, news is a whole different thing, right? And we need to be the ones that, along with the media sector, and also tech platforms, to be guiding and providing new perspective on what news is. and to keep it within the media and reporting ethical standards, you know. And so I want to go to Phenyo and say, from a legal and rights perspective, what are the biggest challenges that children face in accessing safe and accurate information in a very heavily AI-driven media environment?
Yeah, so I'm gonna start off with an example. I don't know if you guys use Chrome or Google a lot. I think most of us do. If you're looking for something now, if you put something sort of into the search bar, you get AI overviews, right? The little, it has a blue star. And then it kind of gives you an overview of what you're looking for. And then sometimes it links to articles. Very rarely does it link to actual news sites. Moreover, some of the answers that you get are, it's a coin toss. Sometimes you'd read something and then the answer contradicts itself. And so it hallucinates in that respect, right? And that creates obviously a frustration in just gaining access to news, access to information, but it also sort of undermines and threatens media sustainability, because these sort of AI overviews do not look at news sites, they do not lead you to news sites, but somehow they're still informed by news sites. So, you know, these platforms, and we also see it if, you know, use your ChatGPTs, your co-pilots, whatever, the news is referenced sometimes, but the people who actually contributed to making that news available, the journalists, etc., are not recognized, or they are not given sort of the necessary compensation that they need to get for having their their contributions contributing to the training data of AI systems. So it causes a lot of issues. It creates a competition sort of issue. So if you look at it from like a competition law sort of standpoint, it's almost an unfair bargaining position that sort of these platforms put these news sites on. It creates issues with regards to intellectual property, you know, because information that is obtained is not necessarily attributed to the author of said information. And also, you know, all of these things considered undermine sort of our access to meaningful news, to content, access to information. And then there's also, I suppose, other issues that emanate from trying to source news or source information where AI just keeps popping up. There's a privacy consideration. You don't know where that information is going. And so those are just some of the some of the considerations and some of the legal implications. And it gets quite technical if we're talking about sort of intellectual property and competition, but it also is something that affects all of us, because if media sustainability is sort of the sacrificial lamb for AI to thrive, it also impacts sort of our, as a collective, our access to sort of news and meaningful, to news and sort of meaningful information.
I want to go back to the young people. You've done a little bit of digital and media literacy training, and you get a sense of the potential impact that AI has. But how do young people, including yourself and others, how do you guys use AI? How do you guys use AI? What do you guys think about AI? Do you think it's important? What is your feeling around
I mostly use AI to help me with my homework in case I don't understand something. And I think that these days AI is getting very dangerous, because there's videos, especially on TikTok, where they show things that aren't even real and things that are too bizarre to be real. So, like, it shows that how dangerous AI is becoming or how real AI is becoming. And in my opinion, I think that it's a possibility that AI might be getting too dangerous for people.
We as young children often use AI to do homework, and many people use it to translate their work because not everyone is good at Afrikaans or any other languages. I think that AI is not a good source because it limits a person's capabilities. That's why I think that people need to stop using AI. Thank you.
Thank you so much. With that, we'll open it up to the floor to get a few questions. I think a lot of questions will not be for me and Musa and Phenyo. I suspect I could be wrong. Please help us. So I think we'll go with each question because like I said, I think they will be for the young people. So we'll take each question and answer the question.
Hi guys, I'm very nervous, so I might stumble on my words. On Phenyo's point, I'm Kia from MMA, by the way. On your point, the AI you were talking about is Gemini and Sora, the ones that look very real. I also think it's very dangerous because it has implications on how maybe children might see the news as well. Because if something looks very real, then they are more inclined to believe it. So, yeah, that's my comment, not a question. Thank you.
Sorry for the people coming in front. So I'm gonna ask as a parent, so how are you? I'll start with the gentleman. With the capacity buildings that you gave to the young people, like for how long were they? And is it continuous? And are you planning on giving it, especially to the underprivileged communities? Are you planning to do that? And subsequent to that.
To add to that, one of the reasons why we even started thinking about advanced media literacy project was because we've been doing a project called Web Rangers Project. It's a digital and media literacy project for 10 years now. And so it's really stemming from that. Some of the lessons that come from there is that and the aims of the digital and media literacy program is really to empower young people to be in the forefront of thinking and shaping the digital space, and for them to be able to lead and participate effectively and in a meaningful way. They need to be able to lead and have the knowledge and skills and be able to lead. And so it stems from that, from the lessons that are coming from the Web Rangers program, where young people want to participate, want to engage, but just they don't have the new emerging skills. Right now, there's this thing called AI literacy, and people are like, what is it, but it's rooted in critical media information literacy. All of this is part of information. It's part of
to sort of ensure that young people are not exposed to some of the darker sides of AI. It's a very complex, just internet use in general, right? Because again, we have to balance sort of rights to freedom of expression, rights to access information, sort of against sort of these concerns as well. And yeah, I don't think it should be the sole responsibility of platforms to ensure that their verification sort of systems are robust. It should be, but I don't think that right now we can fully rely on these actors to do that. It's just simply based off their track record, maybe not the best idea. But I will give maybe two examples that from the UK, both of them, just on some thoughts around what could be done to sort of limit access to, or exposure rather, not access, to harmful content. And again, both of these are quite controversial, and I think they have to be considered in light of our context as a country, where we place, because we have a very high regard to sort of meaningful participation of children and all of those other rights. So we just need to kind of like take that into consideration as well. But sort of the first thing that was proposed by the UK, and this is a suggestion or an approach that was announced sort of last year, but hasn't been materialized. But thought exercises maybe to sort of broaden the criminalization of the use of AI tools, specifically those that are used to generate CSAM, as well as sort of the possession of AI-generated CSAM. So South Africa has something like, under the sort of the Cybercrimes Act, Films and Publications Act, we could kind of work our way around to say that we have sort of similar protections, but the UK does take it a step further, or they intend to take it a step further by sort of imposing this in situations where there are no actual sort of children or like victims involved. So any use of AI to generate CSAM, even if it is not of the likeness of an existing child, will be criminalized just based on sort of this approach. And again, it brings into the fore questions of freedom of expression, if there isn't an actual victim involved, why artistic expression, and these are very difficult things to sort of to tackle with. And I'm sorry, I'm not actually giving you an answer, I'm just giving you sort of things to consider. The other sort of recommendation that came from Ofcom, which is the UK's communications regulator, was that Gen AI platforms sort of engage in a usability testing, and this would just basically be a process to identify ways in which the platform can be sort of abused by malicious actors. So I think this is something that we may very well want to consider, and sort of consider which players and actors we want to assist us in this. Should it be the information regulator that spearheads sort of this initiative? But I think the UK, again, has some sort of benefit in that a lot of the training data, a lot of the systems are very much close to where they are. Here we would have to sort of go consider what we want our systems to look like, apply the sort of safety by design approach that kind of spoke on earlier, and then see if we can work sort of recommendations like this in. But it's very tricky, and I don't think we want a world where children cannot access something that is embedded in every application currently. AI is not, obviously Gen AI is something else, but AI generally, it's Grammarly, there's AI in your phone camera, it's everywhere, it's in everything, and it would be very difficult to sort of restrict access in that respect, especially because now we see a lot of platforms, Google, Microsoft, have embedded AI applications. So would we be restricting kids from it's tricky, would we be restricting kids from using Microsoft Office because it has Copilot, which could be potentially used to, spread, to generate things that could spread mis or disinformation, or that could be used to develop child sexual abuse material. So it's very hard to balance that, and we do have that sort of tension as well, and we explore that tension in our discussion document. So please do read it.
So I think the other part of the question was to the young people. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you were asking do they think that they or generally parents understand the extent of AI? What do they need to look out for in this age? So the question is, do you think parents know what you guys are doing online and what do they need to be looking out for to make sure that you guys are safe and protected online?
I think that our parents do know what we're not supposed to be doing on AI, because many parents do warn us about pornography that can be found on AI. But I do think that children do not listen to that, and that parents do not know what we are doing on AI.
My parents know what I am doing on AI, and like she said, AI can give you access to pornography or things that you are not supposed to be watching, especially for your age. So my parents know that.
Okay. Before we get to the next speaker, I just wanted to comment on the issue of the age. As a country, should we be considering extending the age of just internet uses and access to social media for young people? We had the discussion, William, in Cape Town, the G20 online, Child Online Safety Summit. And we had other countries, I can't remember which country, Norway was talking about possibly restricting or having the limit, or having the age to 18, so it basically means that children will not have access to social media. And we also had this discussion, and I'm not sure if that's the way to go. I don't have the answers, right? But I do think that we need to think critically about these issues. It's like what we always say at MMA is that when you, so today you're 17 and you have no rights to vote and to drive and to do all these beautiful things. And then the next day you're 18 and you're expected to just be able to handle all this responsibility without a process, like an ushering process to say, you're turning this age, these are the things that you need to be thinking about, these are the potential harms, these are the potential disadvantages of engaging in such activities. And so I don't know if it'll help us to just say, let's move it to 18 and everything will be perfect. Because we do have adults that are problematic, and we all know those adults. My mom sometimes is one of those adults where she'll just share stuff, even though I've told her, you can't share, you have to double check if this is correct, right? And so to think that's going to help us, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for this session. It's always really interesting to hear the young voices, and it's really amazing that you guys always have these platforms for the young people. I think my question is more as a parent, but also just like as people in the media sort of spaces and NGOs and etc. But also just as moms and dads and caretakers or whatever the case may be, how can we support programs like this and get them into our own communities and our own schools and our own sort of, and then also, do you guys have any sort of training programs for adults and the parents? Because that's also, I mean, yes, we know that adults need a lot of media literacy training, but ultimately they are shaping the younger generation who is inheriting the really difficult problems that are being created today.
For sure. So we do have, as part of the Web Range's digital and media literacy training, we do have parent workshops. We also have a newsletter. We have a channel on WhatsApp. But parents don't have time to engage. And that's the other responsibility the parents have, right? And it's this thing of, I helicopter parent my child. So I know that I just grab that phone when they're sitting in the lounge and I look and and parents will tell you this. And through that activity or through that exercise, they feel that they know what's happening, which is not, you just need to sit down with a young person to know that parents don't know what's happening. There's this app that you can hide. It comes as if it's a calculator. A lot of parents don't know that. It comes as a calculator. So it just sits there on the child's phone, and you think it's a calculator. When you tap on it, it's actually a chatting site. But parents don't know this, right? And so to think that you know better than your child when it comes to technology is to fool yourself. And again, like I said, children will always find innovative ways to be online. And the minute you say it's not a 10, don't do TikTok, that's the first thing they'll do, right? And so that's why at MMA we always encourage parents to engage in the process, work with the child in terms of digital and media literacy, advocate for it. If you do have a voice in the school, advocate for digital and media literacy to be part of the curricula, and to be agile, right? What the DBE is doing right now is to integrate these things into the life orientation curricula. But right now, they don't even have a section on AI, right? By the time they integrate it, it has to go through so many people that so much damage has to be done. So alongside what DBE is doing, it needs to be a consistent effort at a national level and a national strategy that speaks to how do we integrate these digital harms. Because these digital harms don't just stem on the fact that young people have technology. It stems from the socio-economic status of the country, the socio-economic position of the country, or landscape of the country. You know, some of these issues go deeper than just a device, having a device and connection. Like the fact that you continuously bully your friend without even having a remorse, and you are friends with this person, but at night you're bullying them every day, speaks to some psychosocial interventions that need to be had with young people, right? Around the kind of value systems that we hold as a country. Where are we going as a country? What are the value systems that we continuously uphold even in the digital age, right? This idea of Ubuntu, you know, so even as we progress digitally and in terms of technology and development, we still need to continuously be checking about our values as a country. What are the values that are taught in schools, in the classroom? What are children actually, how are we shaping their behavior, you know, and changing and mental shifts and social behavior? So it goes deeper. And I don't think as a country we are ready to have that conversation, so I don't know where we are. I don't know.
Thanks for a great panel. Excuse me. There are two things I wanted to say. The one is that it seems a lot of it, the discussion has been about children as users, as consumers. And I think there's another perspective, which is children as creators of content on social media. And I think, you know, there's certainly something to be said there if we're moving into this digital economy, and these are skills that young people are actually preparing themselves for potential work, potential revenue, etc. in the future. So my gut feel is to move away from the kind of nanny state type. You know, I think we don't give children enough credit. They are a lot smarter than we think they are. And I also think that a lot of parents, like my parents' generations, they never used to talk to us about sex. You know, I think it's the new thing. And it's about, as you would teach your child about anything that could harm them, to beware of this, beware of that. And so giving them the tools that they need, I think, is helpful. So I wanted to also hear from the learners about, in the school environment, what are your teachers, what approach are your teachers? Are they encouraging you to explore I'm calling it also to separate between new media and the news media, where you get news and information, and social media. But let's just, are your teachers, what approach are your teachers taking with AI and social media? Thanks.
Our teachers at school do not encourage us to use AI because they believe that we can work to the best of our ability. Thank you.
Yes, our teachers at school do not encourage us to use AI, especially for our schoolwork, because when it comes to writing an exam, there's no AI to help you with the answer.
Okay. Good afternoon to the panel. Sorry, I just came in, so I don't know the extent of where the conversation went, but I wanted to ask the two ladies, you've been quite clear, especially on your feelings about AI, since I've been sitting here. I wanted to find out if there was an age restriction for AI, especially generative AI, like open AI and ChatGPT. if there was an age restriction, what do you think that age restriction should be? And then my second question is, in the US, I don't know if you've heard, but there's a young boy whose name is Adam, who died by suicide. And because he was dealing with mental illness and depression, and he confided in AI, and then fortunately to his demise, AI told him not to tell his parents. AI also offered to write him his suicide note. So in terms of your engagement as children with AI, what do you think the age restriction should be? And also, how far do you go in terms of, the things that you ask AI? Because in that circumstance, he could have been assisted had he spoken to his parents, but unfortunately, it came to his demise. So I'm just curious to know, in terms of your opinion, how do you think AI can sort of affect your mental health, and how far do you go, and what age restriction would you have for it? Thanks.
The age restriction that I think AI should have is maybe 18 or 21 plus. But even if they put an age restriction, there's people who want to use AI. And when AI asks you for your age, you can just lie. It's as easy as that. So putting an age restriction won't really work, because people lie about their age almost all the time, especially on social media platforms. And for your second question, I believe that asking AI for emotional or mental advice is kind of stupid, because AI doesn't even have any feelings. AI is not a person, so it doesn't have any feelings, meaning it cannot really tell you what to feel. So for the boy who asked for mental advice or something like that, I think it wasn't really a good idea, because it's not like AI can really feel what he was feeling instead of how his parents would have helped him.
I think that the age restriction for using AI should be like 18 plus, because I feel as if once you are over the age of 18, many parents allow you to make your own decisions, and they start letting you be independent. I think that asking AI for emotional and mental advice is not a good idea, because AI is not a human being. AI does not know how you are feeling and how to react to what you are feeling. It will just give you advice on what it has been programmed to tell you.
Here's a question.
Maybe just to add to what they've shared, I think, I'm not very old, so by the time I was, 13, I was these learners' ages. We did have the internet and stuff, and I remember similar sort of conversations being had with me, with my, teachers, parents, etc. And with, a lot of these sites at the time, you could, and I don't want to get too dark and too graphic, but you could Google, like, what are some ways to harm myself, etc. And then they'll just give you a list and will be like, yeah, do this, and that. Systems have kind of progressed a little bit since then. Now you get a thing from the depression, South African depression, with sort of numbers and like, don't do this and all of that. And again, it speaks to sort of, and this is in our discussion report, speaks to just the sort of safety by design inquiry, right? We can't fix faulty systems with, just age verifications. The systems are faulty, the systems are hallucinating, because the systems are not well thought out, because the systems, when the first sort of AI LLM was sort of issued, all the others wanted to follow suit and they rushed the process, and we see the results of that. We can't fix the system by restricting children's access to information. We need to fix the system. And how we do that is hard, but maybe it may not be an immediate solution, you know, employing our own systems, having this safety by design approach from the onset may not be a quick fix because it takes time. But I think in the interim as well, I think it's just worth recognizing that this is different. It's a different issue, but to me, not quite novel. We've seen this before. With the internet, we've seen it before. We saw it with phones. We saw it with like BBM and Mixit and all of those things. We've seen it before, and we've had these conversations before, and I think different parents or guardians had different approaches. For some it was you will not have a phone until you're 18. For others it was, you know, we'll try and input safety controls, and then parents took it upon themselves to learn what those controls are. For others it was we will share a device. For others it was, you know, just do you and figure it out. But yeah, I think again, and it's very important what these two young ladies shared is it's so easy to bypass these verification systems because the system in and of itself is so faulty. We need to fix the system. We can't add another faulty system to fix a faulty system, if that makes sense.
Thank you so much, Phenyo. We have, I think, last question? 2? Okay, we'll take 2 and then we'll close.
I think this has been said multiple times already, and like Phenyo, when I was growing up, the internet existed, and I remember for myself, when Mixit came out, my parents flat out said, you will not be. Even when WhatsApp came out, I had to sneak myself onto WhatsApp until my mom accepted it. I didn't get Mixit, or I didn't have my own account, but I still found a way to be in touch with the Mixit Pulse. And so, but again, I think I was sheltered in the way I interacted with the internet because of the adults around me, my parents, my aunts, my uncles, my teachers, you know, so many people, you know, in the community that we had were available to make sure that there were guardrails to how we interact with the internet. And so I think my question is, I think a couple of parents have mentioned, I think you have also mentioned too, Phakamile, that parents don't have time, but I wonder, and I'm not a parent anytime soon, I hope, but I wonder what is the difference now to when we had, you know, things like MySpace and Mixit and, you know, those lesser evils, you know, compared to what we have now. What is the difference now in terms of how parents are making time to learn how to protect their children, and not just parents, but the adults around children, as a teacher, as a community center leader and things like that? How do we make time, or how do we find ways to learn these systems? Because the unfortunate fact, as our young ladies have mentioned, is they're going to find ways to access it. But how do we make sure that even if they find ways to access generative AI, how do we make sure that they know how to interact with it and how to protect themselves when interacting in these spaces?
Thank you so much. I think, just to shortly answer you before we move to the final question, is that if adults in the young person's life, whether parents, aunts, uncles, whoever, don't understand the importance of child online safety as a life skill, then nothing they do will work or is effective, right? I have a 10-year-old, and I've started prepping her around menstrual periods, and she has 2 pads in her bag, Every time like now it was holidays, on Monday we had the small talk in the car to say, if anything happens, you go to the bathroom, you let a teacher know what's happening. If you're feeling uncomfortable, give me a call, right? It's happening on my way to work, on my way to school to drop her off, because I understand the importance of having her understand that she doesn't need to freak out when that happens, right? And she needs to know what exactly to do to make sure that she's okay. And if possible, she just carries on with the rest of her day, despite what has happened. If you don't, so that's a life skill that I have to have with my daughter at 10 years old, to make sure that she is ready for this big thing that's going to happen, right? But so it's the same thing. It's really the same thing. When you are about to give your child a phone at 13, you need to be ready to have that conversation, right? To say, if you take every picture of yours and you have it online, be ready that someone is going to take it and misuse it in a way, right? So how do you make sure that your right to privacy is respected? By not sharing as much as you should and so forth, So if you're not ready to have those discussions at every point, unfortunately, our jobs as parents has become so much harder, right? Because the internet never rests, And so to the gentleman's comment around children as producers, we always have this really tension discussion with William where we talk about influencers, and are we ready to have a conversation around children being influencers, or what we call kid influencers, kidfluencers, I can't even say the name, And so the tension around that is that at the moment we are not sure of the values that this idea or concept of influencer is instilling on our children. And that we have to say outright, right? We are not sure of this idea, but what evidence is showing is that it does lead to a lot of bad self-esteem or low self-esteem, where children are the minute young people, and there's evidence, when the minute young people get on Instagram, their self-esteem just drops. Why is that? Because they're looking at other people that are influencers and this perfect life that so there's a lot of stuff that we still need to look at critically before we can decide that we want to encourage and promote this kid influencer, whatever it is, because of the very real and long-lasting impact that it has on a young person's life who still needs to grow and develop and to reach their full potential as a human being, So, like I said, it just proves my theory that these issues are really deeper than just a device and connection. They speak to real, deeply embedded systemic trauma and issues that we as a country are experiencing. And now they are just manifesting themselves on social media, on the internet. Yeah. Last question. Then we really need to close.
Thank you for this session. Firstly, I want to applaud MMA for this program, because when I think about the fact that young people are being empowered with critical engagement skills in the media space, it's so important, because when we look at what's happening with adults and the ease with which people are radicalized because they can't actually critically engage the news and say this is real, this is not real, and some of the dangers that those pose to things as simple as democracy. And so, firstly, just for that point, thank you. And the question I wanted to ask our young people there is that there is this generational gap in terms of what we use, like I would use a social media for, or what I would use the media space for, and what you would use the media space for. So when I think about when I was growing up, my mom's big things were like, there's porn online, right? And there's all these other things online. Whereas now, there are considerations of things like brain rot. And when I hear the conversation around age restriction and the fact that there need to be age restrictions to things, are you finding that in the things you are able to access within the age restrictions that are implemented, you are coming across content that you feel like is not meant for you? Like this is either too mature or it makes you uncomfortable, even within the age restrictions that are prescribed and you're sticking to them. Thank you.
Maybe just to explain for both of you, the question is, so firstly, do you use sort of do you use age restriction tools for, do you use those things? And even if you do use them and you say that I'm a child on this platform and stuff, do you still come across problematic content or harmful content?
Yes, when I am watching TikTok, I do come across things that I know are not for my age or things that make me feel uncomfortable. And there is a button on TikTok that you can press that says not interested and you don't want to see this content anymore. So like most of the time, I do press that button if I feel like the content is too much for me or if the content is making me feel uncomfortable. And my mom doesn't really follow up on age restriction things because she knows that I am responsible enough to know what I'm supposed to be watching. And if I don't listen to that, I'm only hurting myself because now at my young age and I'm watching inappropriate things, my mind will be rotten, she says. So at my age, I know that I'm not supposed to be watching some things because I know that they are inappropriate for my age.
Yes, on social media platforms, we find a lot of things that are not appropriate for our age. Even though we have chosen and we have put our age in there, we still get shown things that are not for our age. Yes, there are options to say that you are not interested in this content, but usually I think that the system is trying to figure out what you like. So normally, if you stay on that video for long, the algorithm is most likely to pick it up and show you more of that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As you can see, we're doing a wonderful job. We're doing a wonderful job of keeping these young people lead. Okay, so I'm going to ask for quick closing remarks from our panelists, and then we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much.
Yeah, maybe just very quickly from me, and maybe just to piggyback on what Phakamile just said, I think we need to, as a people, like really delve into sort of the socio-psychological implications of us using platforms. And I think we also need to get to a point where we stop sort of the stigma around some of the harms that are experienced online, where we can talk openly about bullying, about harmful content being shared. If a non-consensual image of yours was disseminated and shared, that stigma should not be, the blame should not be on you. We should remove that stigma. And it's a societal thing. It's a societal thing. The police don't take us seriously, you know. Teachers, older people tend to victim blame, so we need to kind of remove ourselves from that mindset, and only then can we really have honest conversations on how to ensure online safety, just generally.
Anything you want to add? Anything you want to add to the discussion as we close? Any final thoughts?
So I would like to see some change in the media, like when the media is representing children's stories, I would like to see the change that most of the story, the children who actually experienced it are talking, if it's like good things and not things about getting raped or killed. So if it's like children's achievements, I would like for those children to be able to tell their story instead of the media predominantly explaining their story.
My suggestion for everyone is that when looking for children's stories on social media, you need to do your research about those stories, because many of them are false stories. And a change I would like to see in the media is the reduction in the spread of misinformation and disinformation. Thank you.
First thing for me, I would like to commend the learners here for wonderful sharing of the experience. We are a good ambassador of children's rights. So for me from here and the learners, today is the start of the media advocate campaign, where learners will be sharing their experience with us other learners. From next week, they'll be going to to school and then meet with the other learners, share their experience, what they have learned about children's rights. And I hope also media personnel that are here have heard what the kids said and you start implementing it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. With that, we've come to the end of our panel. As you can see, we were the best of the day. But we are going to have a later section. I think it starts at 6. Yes? 6. Please do come back and join us at 6. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to Phakamile. That was a spectacularly useful panel. I mean, when you make a drug, right, as a legitimate drug, paracetamol or something, you write about it, you do experiments, and then those get peer-reviewed and peer-reviewed and peer-reviewed, and eventually you get to do experiments on animals, and then if that passes and shows that it works, you experiment on a small clinical trial of people, and only after that works does it actually eventually go to market. Here we are, they've invented this thing that people like Elon Musk, who's one of the most evil, despicable humans alive, says we must be scared about this thing. When one of the worst people is telling you to be scared of a thing, and yet they then just say, oh, don't worry, we're going to release it to everyone, when the adults don't have the slightest cooking clue what the implications are of AI. And then they say, no, don't worry, we're going to have some safety things for children. And then the other biggest lie that they portray, right, all of these social media is, well, you know, we can't really help with the age verification thing, because what do they say? Children lie about their age, and we don't really know. We're just doing the best we can. What a lot of horse poo, right? It's absolute drivel. There was one of the Australian safety commissioners was interviewed, and she said, one of the people from TikTok said to her, they know within 3 seconds the age of a person on a TikTok account. Meta collects on average 10 to 15 million pieces of data on each of us. 10 to 15 million, that determines everything. If you're suggesting for a single second that they don't really know not only who we are and every single thing about us, that they don't know our age down to the second, then you're just fooling yourselves. So the issue isn't our people and those age verifications and children lying. It's about real and meaningful political will. This is about the fact that there's a reason they're giving us these platforms for free, right? Because we are the product. The only way we're going to change these things is to mobilize, get young people to get up in arms about it, and to demand the basic respect for human rights of dignity and equality. Because again, the thing that you'll also find is that because these are brown-skinned people, there's a clear racist agenda that's being perpetuated. People in southern half of the world, developing nations, the protections that they are afforded are not the same as the protections that are afforded to children in Western Europe and to children in Northern America. We need to be angry about these things, and we need to act and demand meaningful action. And if we don't get it, we need to hold them accountable. And that means making them pay, right? Real money. So this is coming. If they think they're in for an easy ride over this because AI is here and it's going to turn our children into zombies, they may be right. Look what's happening in America. It's a zombification of an entire nation. But that's okay. We're better than that in Africa, because here it's about the we and not about the me. So we'll get them. So with that, sorry, I was sitting there getting angry about all of these things because it drives us mad. We've got a clear plan for a proper 0 to 18 media and information literacy curriculum that hopefully we're going to get to implement. And with our lovely friends here, we're going to continue to do more work, highlight things, we'll take them to court. And with young people, we'll have better laws. We're going to do all of these things. So thank you, young and amazing people. Can you come up here now and we can have some pictures? And while you do that, I'm going to, yeah, you can give them a woo. That's a good idea. So today is day 2 of the Media Freedom Festival. In about two hours now, We're going to start having some drinks outside in the foyer for the Journalism Slam, which is going to be a really, really cool event. Some of our country's top journalists are going to be there. And then that'll conclude day 2. Day 3 tomorrow evening. You better be there as well. We've got Dan Corder coming, and there's a big announcement about MMA and what we'll be doing in the future and how we're going to defeat the dark forces. There's also really cool sessions on information integrity, and I've just drawn a blank on some of our other sessions. And then, oh yes, we've got a whole pile of brilliant, brilliant and amazing people to talk about either some of the work they're doing, a project that they're doing, an initiative that they're running. Be there, because it's going to be, you're going to have your mind go at the end of it. And maybe if all of our heads explode, it'll feel cooler in this room. So with that, thank you for the afternoon session. We will see you later or tomorrow.
Thank you.